Hi there, my name is Austin. I'm a senior product designer here at GitLab. Today I wanted to do a little overview of the work that Daniel and I collaborated on as a UX scorecard evaluation as it would relate to creating audit deliverables. So Daniel, first and foremost, thank you so much for all of your effort in going through the different tasks, posting your videos and your summaries, and highlighting the workflow and the pain points in your mural diagram. All of that was super helpful. In the end, we have a nice list of issues as they would pertain to UX scorecard recommendations. What I'll definitely say from the get-go is this helped reinforce a lot of the existing action items that we already have identified issues. So it was cool to see that we do need to continue to prioritize some of those things. But I also wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of how you did, just to let you know more about like this area of the product, and help you better understand some of the challenges that our users run into. So first and foremost, I mean, one of the tasks I gave you was to go through and see if users were added or removed based on their projects or permissions. The first thing I noticed was you jumped in as an administrator, which was fine. The struggle that we actually run into is most users don't get the permission to be an administrator or let alone an owner. And so they can't necessarily perform all the same actions that you got to. It was okay that you did. I understood the kind of instructions were kind of confusing, but overall, you did a great job. We do know that we need to improve what roles have access to specific pieces of data in GitLab. So we have a pretty old issue open to expand the auditor role. This might tie into the role-based access control effort that's kind of being collaborated on with some other designers right now as we try and rethink how to make that more flexible and more useful for users. Because at the end of the day, not everybody can be an administrator in GitLab, not even everybody can be an owner, and that's a real pain point for users. Additionally, as you were going through your evaluation, you highlighted a number of good pain points, like the object being not a great descriptor. Sometimes it describes a project, sometimes it's describing a user or a group or something else, and that's not necessarily clear. So I think it'd be great to revise some of these headers to better describe what the data is underneath it. Likewise, I think the data underneath it could be better designed to inform users. So if you were to take out the event itself into a CSV, which you did as a deliverable, which is great. A lot of users do kind of share that CSV as a filtered list to help with their audits. You'd see that this is listed as a project, or that this was actually listed as a compliance framework in a project setting. I think bringing some of that data into the table itself could make this a lot more readable and leave less guesswork. That, or even just redefining like what makes a target. Just using the name of the target isn't necessarily the most useful information. As you can see from my dummy data, it doesn't necessarily make sense all that well anyways. Additionally, you identify that like, hey, this export CSV button is really helpful in the admin area. I agree. We already have issues open to put that in the group area and the project area. It's not a security thing. It's literally just an effort thing. It just takes time to add each of these pieces of functionality. We just haven't gotten around to prioritizing yet. With that said, there were a couple things that I also wanted to cover in terms of how these events pages are structured. So you may or may not know this yet, but the instance audit events will show you everything in your GitLab instance. So projects and groups are both included here. So this is probably the most useful audit events page. The major downside right now is you don't get to see all of your other events in here. So an area where you missed something actually was you needed to actually go to your group audit events to discover that Alicia Murray had their role changed in the project because Alicia Murray's permissions were granted through GitLab org, not through the project itself. And you wouldn't be able to discover that in the project audit events itself just by the way that it's structured. It's actually a group event because that's where it happened, but it does have implications on the project. So if you were a SaaS customer using GitLab.com, that's very annoying. But the reason we can't show all these events together, even at the group level, is it doesn't perform well. Our queries just don't meet our standards, and so it's currently just a gap in the user experience. So I understand that sucks, and we're trying to find ways around it. Honestly, I think if the workspace group is able to help kind of bring down some of those features out of the admin area, expose them more to our SaaS customers and users, then it would be a lot more useful because we can bring some of this functionality to a single source of truth. Furthermore, you definitely identified a pain point that happens with the calendar picker. So like I can't pick September 1st. That's just because we only allow you to pick 31 calendar days, and or really 30 calendar days. Comes to about a month. So it's annoying. We know users want to be able to pick, from the first of the month through August 31st, but unfortunately we just can't right now. It doesn't perform well in our database. It can bring things to a crawl, and so we have to find ways to work around that. We tried providing some quick filters just to help sort down some of the most recent data, but even that doesn't help when you start needing to go into more historical records. And unfortunately, now Gitpod has gone to sleep. So, dang it, what's about to happen? Yeah, while that's coming back up, I'll highlight a couple other things. So, even though I know that we want to introduce better filtering, like it would be great to be able to say, show me all of the events where users were added or removed. We can't really do and or filtering right now. It's just not possible with our search component. So we kind of are blocked just by that needing to become a priority for GitLab to build. So right now users are kind of stuck with what they can do here, and they can look up specific users, they can look up specific projects, but they can't do anything more than that. It's not great. But on the flip side of that, they can take out the data, especially if they have the administrator account to get the CSV here, and at least work with it in like Google Sheets or Excel or something, so they can better find the information they're looking for. Just being able to do it through our own filter options is just not viable right now. So I'm not going to open an issue for that currently, just knowing that it's going to have to happen at some point. And for the second task, all right, so really what this comes down to is a lack of knowledge of what separation of duties typically means in the compliance world. So I loved your interpretation and effort that you put towards trying to figure that out by reading through the audit events to figure out were there any separation of duty problems. We actually have an area in the product that helps identify this a little bit better, and some information in docs that can help as well. So if you're in a group and you go to the compliance report page, you'll see that there are a list of merge requests, and this approval status column is designed to help you understand if a merge request did not adhere to separation of duties. So if you're wondering what that is, I'm gonna just do a little search in our docs for it. So we try and help users understand if their merge request didn't comply with a separation of duties policy that may or may not be enforced at their company, by highlighting whether or not something had a merge request author that approved their own merge request, or maybe a committer approved the merge request that they added commits to. These are just kind of considered no-nos in the compliance world. So we know whether or not this is happening. I'll go ahead and say that we know that this dashboard itself has been identified as rather useless. We did solution validation around it last December, like December 2020, came out with some good insights, and we're just now kind of getting around to actually working on that. So like one thing we added was a drawer that starts bringing in some of that very pertinent merge request data into this dashboard, so you can actually start investigating what's going on with it without necessarily having to leave and go to the merge request itself to figure out more information. What's going to eventually turn into is a more useful page that helps users better understand what's happening. So a separation of duties violation would be a merge request was approved by its own author. and we can highlight that as a severe violation, and then that can document a piece of data that's going to be like evergreen. It's going to continue to exist, and these are for changes that have been merged like into production. So this wouldn't be for every single merge request that's ever created, but at least the ones that are reaching production. The reason why this is important is as a regular aspect, a part of many audits are you have to go and figure out if there were any of these rules that happen to be violated. Yes, we have like merge request approval settings that help prevent these actions from happening, but who's to say that a project maintainer doesn't change the setting and then the action occurs to get around it, and then you have a change that reaches to production. This creates a single place for users to go find when things happened in the past and be able to identify them. So you didn't get around to this part, that's totally cool. The thing I'll just help reinforce with this is that we have a whole epic to try and make this better already. And hopefully in the future that will make it easier for users to even identify it in the first place when they are trying to go in and figure out if there are any failure to maintain separation of duties. All right, cool. So with that, I think that kind of wraps up this effort. I'll link the video here in the issue itself. Again, Daniel, thank you so much for your work. I love to see others learning more about my area of the product, and that'll help us further collaborate in the future.